Rich kids bullied a woman in wheelchair and kicked her dog. Until a Marine raider stepped in. The heat over Coronado Park wavered like a thin veil, the kind that made everything feel slower, softer, almost safe. Lena Brooks sat beneath the lone jacaranda tree, its purple blossoms trembling over her sketchbook. Her wheelchair rested steady on the concrete. Beside her, Ace, a German shepherd with a dark saddle coat and steady amber eyes, lay with his chin on her footplate, watching every passer-by like the park belonged to him. For a moment it felt peaceful, the kind of fragile peace Lena never took for granted. She dipped her brush into a jar clipped to her tray. The colors blended, warm gold meeting a streak of violet. She lifted her head to show Ace. He tilted his ears forward, as if he understood the importance of this tiny triumph. Lena smiled. Then the shadows fell across them. 3 boys stepped into her patch of light. White polo shirts, expensive sneakers, the easy swagger of kids who had never heard the word no. Their bracelets reflected the sun. Lena recognized the emblem, the Kerrigan family crest. Every local in San Diego did, the kind of family whose money made problems disappear. The tallest boy grinned down at her sketchbook. Nice artwork. How much for the crippled discount? Ace rose instantly, placing himself between Lena and the voices. His growl was low, controlled, the way service dogs were trained to warn before they acted. Lena set a trembling hand on his back. Please leave us alone. Another boy leaned in, grabbing the edge of her wheelchair. His cologne smelled synthetic, sharp. Or what? You gonna run over us? They laughed, not because anything was funny, but because it made them feel bigger. Ace stepped forward, hackles rising. His body formed a shield, pressing gently against Lena's knees. The boys noticed. Oh, look, the dog thinks he's a hero. The first kick came out of nowhere, a dull thud against Ace's ribs. Ace yelped, stumbling but staying in front of Lena. The second kick landed harder. Lena reached forward, voice cracking. Stop! Please, stop! The tallest boy grabbed the wheelchair handles, wrenching her back sharply. The sudden jerk slammed her spine against the seat. Lena gasped. Her paint jar tipped and shattered on the ground, colors bleeding across the concrete. Ace lunged in instinct, not to attack, but to block the blow coming for her. Another kick hit him sideways. His paws scraped the pavement, claws screeching. He whimpered, yet pushed himself up again. His body trembled, but he didn't move away. Lena felt her world narrow into a tunnel of sunlight and terror. The boy's laughter warped. Her throat tightened until she could barely breathe. Please. He's just trying to protect me. The tallest boy leaned close, voice dropping low. That's the problem. He raised his foot again. Ace braced, but his breathing was already ragged, uneven. Lena tried to reach him, but the boy behind her locked the wheelchair wheels with his knee, pinning her in place. She couldn't move. She couldn't help. Asa's eyes flicked back to her, apologetic, loyal, unyielding. And then something changed. Asa's ears twitched, not toward the boys, toward the far side of the park. Lena followed his gaze through blurred tears. A man had stopped mid-stride on the jogging path. Solid build. Grey t-shirt drenched from a long run. Shoulders squared, eyes fixed on the scene with a focus that made the air tighten. He didn't move at first. He assessed, calculated, like he'd done this before. One of the boys noticed him. What are you looking at, old man? The man didn't answer. He started walking. Slow at first. Then Ace barked. A sharp, painful sound that cracked the space open. The man broke into a sprint. The boys glanced at each other, confused. The tallest one cursed. Lena saw the shift in him too late. He panicked. He raised his foot again, this time aiming straight for Ace's head. Ace tried to dodge, but his injured ribs betrayed him. He faltered. Lena screamed. Before the kick landed, a hand caught the boy's ankle in midair. The boy froze. All three did. The jogger, now close enough for Lena to see the scar over his right brow and the calm, lethal composure in his posture, twisted the boy's leg just enough to make him lose balance, not enough to break anything. The boy collapsed, gasping. The second kid swung a fist. The man deflected it effortlessly, stepping into the motion and sending him crashing onto the grass. The third tried to run, but a sharp whistle from the man sent him stumbling backward in terror. Lena stared. She couldn't place it at first. The precision, the silence, the way he never lost control. Marine, a fighter, someone trained to end violence without becoming it. He knelt beside Ace first, checking his breathing, his limbs, the rise and fall of his chest. His voice was low, steady. "Easy, buddy. I've got you." Ace nuzzled his hand, eyes glassy with pain but trust intact. Then the man looked up at Lena, and for the first time she saw the hint of something behind his eyes. Recognition, not of her, but of the situation, of the helplessness, of the kind of cruelty that set off alarms in men who'd spent years stopping worse things in darker places. "Mom, are you hurt?" Lena shook her head, though her voice betrayed her. "He saved me. He saved me, and I couldn't." He glanced at the three boys on the ground, trembling. The boys stared back at him like he wasn't human, like he was something they had only seen in movies and nightmares. The man stood, towering over them. "Walk away. Now, before you make this worse for yourselves." They scrambled up and ran, tripping over their own feet. When they were gone, the man returned to Ace, sliding an arm under the dog's torso with the care of someone who understood pain intimately. "My name's Cal," he said quietly. "Cal Ritter." Ace whimpered as Cal lifted him, but rested his head weakly against Cal's shoulder. Lena felt her chest tighten, not just from the fear slowly fading, but from something unexpected. Relief. Safety. The sense that this stranger had stepped out of nowhere not by accident, but because he had lived his entire life walking toward danger when others ran away. Cal looked at her once more, voice steady. "Let's get your dog help." The wind shifted, carrying the faint smell of the sea. Lena's shattered jar of paint glimmered on the ground, colors spreading like a wound. But Ace was alive, and the man carrying him was already moving, fast, purposeful, as if the story between them had been set in motion long before this afternoon at Coronado Park. Cal Ritter had handled ambushes in dusty valleys, hostage extractions in cramped concrete rooms, and night raids lit only by muzzle flashes. But the moment he saw that boy's foot rising toward Ace's head, something old and buried snapped awake inside him. It was instinct, not thought. A reflex carved by years of stepping between the helpless and the violent. He had only paused for a breath when he first spotted the scene. A Marine raider was trained to observe before he intervened, identify threat, measure distance, predict movement. But when Ace let out that second, broken bark, Cal moved before his mind caught up. 2 strides, then 5, then he was in the middle of it. The first kid swung wild. Cal redirected his wrist, dropped him with a shoulder check that knocked the wind out of him. The second boy came from the side. Cal stepped past the punch, hooked his leg, and sent him face first into the grass. The last boy had the sense to run, already convinced that Cal was something he didn't want to test. Somewhere behind the panic, the boy tripped, scrambled up, and vanished behind the bleachers. Silence fell. Heavy, tense, almost wrong. Ace was still trembling, forcing himself upright despite the pain twisting through his body. Lena reached for him, breath catching when Ace pushed his weight back toward her. He didn't cower. He didn't hide. He positioned himself between her wheelchair and the direction the boys had run, his stance defensive, ready for more, even though his ribs rose unevenly under his fur. Cal crouched beside him. "Easy. I've got you. You did good." Ace's breathing hitched, but he lifted his head enough to meet Cal's eyes. There was no fear in them, only resolve. That simple look forced Cal's jaw tight. He had seen that kind of loyalty once before, in the mountains of Afghanistan, in the eyes of a canine partner that didn't make it home. Lena tried to steady her voice. "Is he going to be okay?" Cal didn't answer immediately. He wiped a thumb over the swollen patch of fur along Ace's ribcage. The dog flinched, but didn't pull away. He was holding himself together for her. "We need to get him checked out. Now." He lifted Ace in one swift, secure motion. The dog was heavier than he looked, but Cal carried him with the ease of someone used to hauling wounded teammates out of fire. Lena rolled her wheelchair forward, hands shaking as she tried to keep up. At the parking lot, Cal set Ace gently in the back of his truck, padding the seat with his running hoodie. Ace curled instinctively toward Lena when she positioned herself close, her fingertips brushing the top of his head. His eyes softened at her touch. The drive to the emergency veterinary clinic passed in a blur of streetlights and Ace's labored breaths. Cal checked the rearview mirror every few seconds, studying the rise and fall of Ace's chest, the way Lena whispered to him under her breath, like the words might stitch him back together. When they arrived, Cal carried Ace inside, while Lena maneuvered her chair behind him. The receptionist took one look at Ace's condition and rushed them straight to the exam room. A vet tech eased Ace onto the stainless steel table, murmuring reassurance as she checked his vitals. Lena tried to follow, but her hands wouldn't stop trembling. Cal placed a steadying hand on the back of her chair. His voice was low, grounded. "Let them work. He's in good hands." Her eyes shimmered, but she kept her chin high. "I should have done something. I should have stopped them." Cal shook his head. "This wasn't your fault." The exam room door swung open as Dr. Elliot, the lead veterinarian, stepped in. Her expression shifted the moment she saw Ace. She pressed along his ribcage, each touch measured and precise. Ace whimpered once, then gritted through the rest without moving, staying strong for Lena. "I'm concerned about fractures," Dr. Elliot said. "Possible bruising around the organs. We'll need X-rays." Lena swallowed hard. She tried to nod, but her breath broke in the middle of it. Ace turned his head toward her, muzzle nudging her hand, as if trying to comfort her instead of the other way around. That small gesture tightened something deep in Cal's chest. He stepped back, leaning against the doorframe. Not relaxed. Never relaxed. His senses were still sharp, tuned to the hallway, the waiting room, the door behind them. Old habits, the kind you didn't shake even when you desperately wanted to. A vet tech wheeled Ace toward the imaging room. Lena's hand hovered as he passed, barely brushing his fur. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I'm right here, boy. You're okay? You're okay." When the door shut, the quiet grew heavier. Cal watched her posture, the way she clenched the armrests of her wheelchair until her knuckles turned pale, the way she kept trying to breathe evenly but couldn't. Strength like that was something he recognized, the kind that held back fear for someone else's sake. Lena finally spoke. Her voice was thin, almost brittle. "They'll get away with it, won't they? Kids like that always do." Cal met her eyes. "Not if I can help it." There was no bravado in his tone, no dramatic promise. Just truth said plainly, like a fact of nature. It made Lena look away for a moment, overwhelmed. A subtle vibration came through Cal's phone. Unknown number. He ignored it. He already suspected what it might be. Someone from the Kerrigan sphere moving fast to contain the situation. He kept his attention on the corridor where Ace had been taken. He didn't pray much. Not anymore. but he found himself silently willing the dog to hold on a little longer. Minutes passed, each one heavier than the last. Then a sharp, metallic thud echoed from deeper in the clinic. Not loud, but out of place. Cal's head snapped up instantly. Instinct, adrenaline, awareness flooding back through his body like electricity. Lena flinched. What was that? Cal didn't answer. He was already moving. Through the crack of the partially opened imaging room door, he caught a glimpse of a figure in the wrong uniform, slipping out the back exit and disappearing behind the dumpsters. Someone had been inside the room with Ace. The plot twisted in an instant. Cal pushed the door open fully. The vet tech stood inside, confused, holding Ace still on the table. Ace's breathing sped up, pupils dilating as if he'd sensed something no one else did. Cal's voice was sharp. Did anyone else come in here? The tech hesitated. No, well, I heard footsteps, but I thought it was another nurse. Lena's voice came from behind him, cracking with fear. Cal, what does that mean? He didn't answer. He watched Ace lift his head, nose pointing toward the door the intruder had slipped through. Ace's ears twitched, his body tensed. Even injured, the dog reacted like a soldier giving a direction. Cal stared at him, understanding what the vet tech didn't. Ace wasn't just a victim, he was identifying a threat. Lena rolled closer. Her eyes flicked between Cal and her dog. Is Ace in danger? Cal rested a hand on the table near Ace's neck. The dog pressed into it, eyes locked on the door. Cal's voice dropped to a steady, controlled calm. Someone came here for him? Lena's breath caught. Why? Cal didn't take his eyes off the hallway. Because he fought back. And something tells me the people behind those kids don't want witnesses. Ace growled, soft but certain. Instinct had awakened in all three of them. Cal straightened, jaw set. Stay with him. I'll check the exit. As he stepped into the hallway, the lights above flickered once. Outside, a car engine revved. Someone was already running from the scene. Cal didn't chase. Not yet. Not while Ace lay on that table, chest rising painfully, trusting him. He turned back to the door, meeting Lena's terrified eyes. The boy's attack was not the end. It was the beginning. The X-ray light flickered across the dim veterinary room. Dr. Elliot stood with her arms folded, gaze fixed on the glowing image of Ace's ribcage. The silence felt heavier than the antiseptic smell hanging in the air. 2 fractures. Left side. He'll need rest, pain management, and monitoring for possible internal bruising. Lena's breath shuddered. She tried to answer, but her voice collapsed halfway. Cal moved closer behind her wheelchair, steadying the space around her without touching, like a quiet barrier between her and the world. Ace lay on a padded mat, wrapped in a light compression band. His breathing was shallow, each rise and fall a reminder of how fragile loyalty could look. When Lena rolled toward him, his ears lifted slightly. His tail gave one weak thump against the bedding. Even hurt, he was reassuring her instead of the other way around. Cal knelt beside him. Strong dog. Hold on. We're going to take care of you. Ace pressed his nose into Cal's palm, a soft whine slipping out. It was the kind of sound that burrowed under the skin, the kind that made people who had survived firefights feel something twist in their chest. Lena wiped her eyes with the back of her wrist. I'm filing a report. They can't get away with this. She said it like she was trying to convince herself. At the front desk, she gave her statement. Cal stayed behind her, silent but unmovable. When the police officer arrived to take the report, he walked in with the stiff politeness of someone who already knew too much. He flipped open a notebook. Miss Brooks, you said 3 minors assaulted you. Yes, and they hurt my dog. Look at him. The officer's jaw tightened. And you're certain they were the Kerrigan boys. Cal watched the shift in his stance, the hesitation, the instinctive calculation of risk. a familiar dance in small cities ruled by wealthy families. Lena's grip tightened on her chair. I know who they are. The officer sighed. His pen hovered, then tapped the paper. I'll file this. But it may take time. These situations are complicated. Cal stepped forward. Complicated how? The officer stiffened when he looked up at Cal. Sir, I'm just saying these kids have legal representation. The process can stall. We need to be thorough. Thorough. The word tasted like surrender. Lena stared at him. So nothing's going to happen. I didn't say that. You didn't need to. The officer cleared his throat, mumbled something about the department following procedure, and walked out with his notebook half filled. Lena's shoulders sagged. It wasn't just frustration. It was the slow withdrawal of hope. Back in the exam room, Ace tried to shift, letting out a strained sound. Lena reached toward him. I'm so sorry. Ace, I'm so. His head nudged her wrist. Not forgiveness, not pity, a reassurance, as if he were telling her that she wasn't the failure she kept imagining herself to be. Cal watched the exchange, feeling something cold crawl up the back of his neck. The attack at the park had been ugly, but this moment, the way Lena blamed herself, the dog suffering for it, this was the part he knew too well. When people with power broke something fragile, then used the system to bury the damage. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Cal stepped into the hallway and answered. Clipped male voice filled the line. Is this Mr. Ritter? Who's asking? I represent the Kerrigan family. I understand you were present during an unfortunate misunderstanding today. Cal's eyes darkened. That what you call it? Let's not escalate things. We're willing to be reasonable. If your friend signs a non-disclosure agreement, the family is prepared to cover medical bills and an additional compensation for her inconvenience. Cal's jaw flexed. Say that again. A pause, then slower. If she refuses, she'll be facing a civil suit for defamation. And I assume she rents her studio space on Ocean Avenue? We own that building. The lease can be terminated. Cal didn't raise his voice, didn't curse. He spoke with the calm of someone who had once called in air support with 3 bullets left. You really want to threaten a disabled woman and her injured dog. Mr. Ritter, don't make this personal. Cal hung up. He walked back into the room without hurry. But something in his presence had changed. The quiet in him wasn't peaceful anymore. It was the kind of quiet that preceded storms. Lena looked up when she saw his expression. What? What happened? He didn't answer at first. He crouched beside Ace again, letting the dog rest his head on his forearm. Then he looked at her. You're going to get a call. From the Kerrigan's lawyer. Lena's face went pale. Already? They want you to sign an NDA, or they'll come after you. And your studio. Her breath cracked. My studio is all I have left. Cal studied her, the trembling in her fingers, the way she blinked too fast, the way she tried and failed to hide the fear crawling up from her stomach to her throat. You're not signing anything. Lena laughed, small, bitter, broken. You don't understand. These people can ruin me. They can ruin anyone. They always have. Everyone knows it. Ash shifted, trying to rise despite the pain. His front paw slid, and he whimpered, collapsing back onto the mat. Lena's voice cracked as she reached for him. No, don't move. Please stay still. The guilt on her face was sharp enough to bruise. Watching Ace struggle tore something loose inside her. The shame, the helplessness, the feeling that she had dragged this loyal creature into a life filled with hurt. Cal placed a steady hand on her shoulder. His voice dropped to something softer, firmer. This isn't on you. None of it. Lena shook her head. Her eyes spilled, not in sobs, but in quiet streaks she didn't even bother wiping. I should have protected him. I should have done something. He wouldn't be like this if— Ace lifted his muzzle toward her, touching her knee gently. A gesture that said exactly what Cal did not. That she was enough. That he didn't blame her. That he had chosen her. And he would choose her again, even if it hurt. Cal watched the dog's trembling effort. Every instinct in Ace's body was trained to protect. Even now he was trying to console his handler. The loyalty in that small movement hit Cal harder than any punch he'd taken overseas. He spoke quietly. Ace isn't broken. He's fighting. For you. Lena swallowed hard. Her voice was barely a breath. And who's going to fight for him? Cal didn't hesitate. I will. A beat passed. A slow inhale. A crack in the hopelessness. But before either of them could speak again, the clinic's front door slammed hard enough to echo through the building. Cal's instincts flared immediately. A voice followed, loud and angry. Where is she? Where's the girl who's lying about my sons? Victor Kerrigan. He wasn't supposed to show up this fast. Cal moved between Lena and the door, just as Ace let out a low, warning growl from the mat. The man who had just threatened Lena over the phone had come in person. And this time, he wasn't alone. The studio sat at the end of Ocean Avenue like a forgotten frame on an abandoned film set. A narrow brick building with chipped blue paint, its windows lined with canvases and charcoal sketches. Under softer circumstances, Cal might have called it charming. Tonight, it felt exposed. Lena unlocked the door with shaky fingers. Ace moved beside her in slow, careful steps, his ribs still wrapped, his breath a shallow rhythm. Every movement carried effort. Every movement carried purpose. He stayed close, nudging her chair forward when she hesitated. Cal scanned the street before stepping inside. He didn't like what he saw. The alley garbage cans had been shifted from their usual place, one angled just slightly too direct toward the studio door, and a car across the street had fog on its windshield, but the engine was cold. Someone had been sitting in it recently, watching. Inside the studio, the air smelled faintly of turpentine and clay. Lena flicked on the lights. Cal's eyes adjusted immediately, sweeping across the walls of half-finished portraits. People in pain. People in motion. And one canvas turned backward against the wall, as if she couldn't bear to look at it. Ice walked in a small circle, sniffing the air. Then he froze. His ears pulled forward, his body stiffened. A low, rumbling vibration rose from his chest. Cal stepped beside him. What is it? Ace moved toward the small table near the front window. Something faint clung to the wood. Not a strong odor, but enough for a dog with a trained nose. Cal leaned closer. Someone touched this. Lena wheeled beside him. What do you mean? Cal nodded toward the table. There's residue. Someone set something down here. Recently. She stared at the spot as if it could sprout teeth. That's impossible. I lock the place every time. Cal searched the door. The deadbolt had been scratched just slightly at the edge. A mark thin as a thread. You were watched. The color drained from her cheeks. You think they were inside. Cal crouched, looking under the table, behind canvases, into shadowed corners. He didn't find someone, but he found intention. A chair moved half an inch from its original place. A brush jar shifted further on the shelf than her reach allowed. Signs people overlooked unless they'd spent years entering hostile rooms where survival depended on noticing the wrong shadow. Lena wrapped her arms around herself. My God! Cal looked at her gently. They're pressuring you. They want you scared. She gave a brittle laugh. It's working. Ace pressed against her leg, resting his muzzle on her knee. His tail didn't wag. His eyes remained locked on the door as if guarding it with what little strength he had. Cal set down his bag and began assembling equipment. A small door alarm, a portable motion sensor, a handheld radio. Nothing military grade, but enough to create layers. Lena watched him through damp eyes. You carry all that on a normal day. Habit. Habit from what? Cal didn't answer at first. He adjusted the motion sensor until it clicked into place. Only when the room settled into silence did he speak. My last assignment went sideways. Not because of my team. They were solid. It was the people above us. Orders changed without intel. Someone with rank rewrote the objective to make themselves look good. And my team walked into something we were never supposed to see. Lena swallowed. What happened? Cal's jaw tightened. One of the guys didn't make it. 12 years together. And it ended because someone wanted numbers on a report. The studio dimmed around them. The kind of quiet that forms when truth finally breaks the surface. I tried to get answers, report it, file something. But the higher it went, the more closed doors I found. That was when I realized something I should have known earlier. Systems protect systems, not people. Lena studied him. Is that why you stepped in at the park? Cal shook his head. No, I stepped in because I saw a woman in danger and a dog trying to protect her. The rest came after. Ars lifted his head toward Cal, as if confirming the words. Lena exhaled slowly. Her shoulders sagged, and she seemed suddenly smaller in the wheelchair. They think they can crush me until I fold. Make me sign my silence away. Cal knelt in front of her. You're not alone in this, and I'm not letting them touch you again. A sudden thump echoed outside the window. Cal's hand went instinctively to his belt, fingers tightening around nothing because he wasn't armed tonight. Ice lifted himself into a standing position despite the pain, hackles rising. His growl reverberated through the wooden floor. Cal stepped to the window. Someone stood half in shadow across the street. Not moving. Watching. The figure wore a hood, face swallowed by darkness. When Cal shifted, the man stepped backward without turning, retreating slowly until he merged into the alley. Cal's voice dropped. They're escalating. Lena wheeled closer. I don't understand. Why are they doing this? Why not let the process happen? Cal didn't sugarcoat it. Because the process protects them. Threats don't need to be loud. They just need to be consistent. Ace barked once, sharp, urgent. Cal kneeled to the dog. What is it, boy? Ace pushed his nose toward the front door. He was in pain, trembling from the effort, but still alerting them. Even wounded, even scared, he was trying to guard his person. Cal whispered. Good eyes, good instincts. Another bark, softer this time, followed by a strained whine. Lena reached for him, stroking his fur. Easy, Ace. You're safe. You're safe. Cal stood. I'm staying here tonight. Lena blinked. What? No, you don't have to. I'm not leaving you alone with someone targeting you. Someone already broke into your studio once. They'll be back. She hesitated, tugged between fear and pride. She looked at Ace, who struggled to keep sitting upright, leaning against her wheelchair for support. Her voice cracked. Please stay. Cal nodded. I'll take the floor. You and Ace get the couch. Lena maneuvered toward the old sofa tucked under the window. Cal helped Ace settle beside her, adjusting pillows so the dog could rest without pressure on his ribs. Ace let out a soft sigh, closing his eyes, but one ear stayed up, guarding even in sleep. Cal sat down on the wooden floor, back against the opposite wall. His eyes stayed fixed on the door. The motion sensor blinked red. Lena watched him in the dim glow, her voice tired but genuine. You don't know me. You didn't have to do any of this. Cal didn't look away from the door. I know enough, and that's all that matters. Outside, a car engine turned over somewhere near the alley, then faded. Inside, Ace shifted in his sleep, pressing closer to Lena as if reminding her he wasn't going anywhere either. The night gathered around them, And Cal Ritter kept watch, because something bigger than a street attack was unfolding. Someone wanted Lena silent, and Cal had spent his entire life running toward the kind of darkness that thought it could scare people like her into disappearing. The morning felt deceptively calm, the kind of cool San Diego air that tricks the skin into thinking the day will be soft. After a nearly sleepless night, Lena insisted she only needed a few groceries. 10 minutes, she said. Cal didn't like it, but Ace needed rest, and Lena needed a small return to normal. Cal watched her wheel out of the studio. Ace tried to rise to follow her, but pain pulled him back down. Cal placed a steady hand on the dog's shoulders. "Rest, buddy. She'll be back." Ace let out a soft whine, but he stayed still. Cal double-checked the window sensors he'd installed, then stood near the door, listening to the quiet. Too quiet. The street outside usually buzzed with footsteps or distant traffic. Today the silence pressed against the glass. 10 minutes passed, then 12, then 15. And when Lena returned, rolling down the block with a grocery bag in her lap, the moment Cal saw her expression, something in his gut tightened. Her face was pale. Too pale. She reached the doorway, pushed it open, and instantly froze. The bag slid from her lap. A can rolled across the floor and hit a broken frame with a hollow thud. Cal stepped up beside her, and even though he had seen war zones, ambush sites, rooms torn apart by men who enjoyed destruction more than victory, the sight in front of him still hit with a violent weight. Her studio, her sanctuary, had been gutted. Canvases lay shredded on the ground, sliced into ragged ribbons. The marshland sunrise she'd worked on for weeks was slashed straight through the horizon. Her easels were shattered, wood splintered across the paint-stained floor. Someone had stomped through piles of charcoal sketches until they were nothing but grey dust. Her jars of pigment, her most valuable supplies, were burst open, their contents thrown against the walls, staining everything in violent streaks of cobalt and blood red. And then Cal saw the words, spray-painted across the largest wall in dripping red. "Next time it's the dog." Lena didn't scream. Not at first. She simply stared, her whole body trembling in her wheelchair. Her fingers clenched around the armrests until her knuckles turned bone white. Cal scanned the room, assessing the break-in. They hadn't come through the door or window. They'd used the secondary hallway entrance. Someone had given them access, or someone had looked the other way. Cal's jaw hardened. They were sending a message. Behind them, Ace let out a sharp cry. Not from fear, from effort. He pushed himself toward the doorway, limping, ribs straining against the bandages as he moved to reach Lena. He shouldn't have been standing. He shouldn't have even been walking, but he dragged himself forward anyway. When he reached her, he pressed his nose into her palm, licking her trembling fingers. His tail lifted once, weakly, as if telling her he was still here, still fighting. That broke her. A sound tore out of her chest, not a scream, not a sob, a low, raw gasp of heartbreak. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead to Ace's, tears falling into his fur, her breaths unsteady. "Why? Why would they do this?" she whispered. "Why Ace? What did he do?" Cal crouched beside them. His voice was steady, but underneath it ran something sharp. Controlled fury. "They want you afraid. They want you alone." Her tears hit the floor. "They destroyed everything I ever made." "No." Cal shook his head. "They destroyed things. Not you." But she didn't hear him. Not really. She was staring across the room, her gaze unfocused. Her life's work was gone, her safe place violated, her dog threatened. Cal took a slow breath, fighting the urge to punch through the nearest wall. This wasn't random vandalism. This was targeted, coordinated. The Kerrigans weren't stepping back. They were escalating. "We're leaving," he said. Lena blinked. "Leaving. But this is my home. My studio. It's not safe. Not anymore. Pack a bag. Only essentials. We're staying somewhere else. She hesitated. She looked around the room, as if trying to gather up pieces of herself scattered across the floor. Ace swayed suddenly. Lena gasped. Ace! Cal turned fast. The dog's legs buckled beneath him. He let out a thin, pained whine, collapsing onto the floor. His chest rose in shallow, rapid breaths. Cal felt the air snap inside his lungs. He moved immediately, sliding his arms under Ace's body with practiced precision. Easy. I've got you. Ace didn't fight the lift. He couldn't. His head rested against Cal's shoulder, eyes half open, trusting, even as pain shook his frame. Lena cried harder. Please help him. Please don't let him. I won't, Cal said, his voice like steel. He shifted Ace carefully into his arms and rose with the kind of strength that didn't strain. It simply existed. He turned to Lena. We need to move. Now. Lena wiped her face, forcing herself to breathe. Tell me what to do. Cal nodded toward the door. Get to the car. I'll be right behind you. She rolled out quickly, her movements jerky. Cal followed with Ace held tight against him. Outside, the sun glared too brightly for the moment they were living through. People walked by, unaware of the collapse happening behind the broken blue door. Cal opened the back of his truck and laid Ace down on a folded jacket, adjusting him carefully to ease the pressure on his ribs. Ace whimpered softly, breathing uneven. Lena's tears came again, silent this time. She reached in, brushing the fur around Ace's ears. You didn't deserve any of this. You protected me, and I wasn't there to protect you. Cal closed the door gently. You did nothing wrong. They did this because they're afraid, and they should be, because now it's my turn. Lena looked at him through red, tear-swollen eyes. What are you going to do? Cal met her gaze. His expression was calm. Too calm. The calm that came before an operation he knew he couldn't afford to fail. I'm going to protect you both, whatever it takes. A shadow crossed her face. Cal, I don't want you getting hurt because of me. He shook his head. This isn't on you. It's on them. He got into the driver's seat. Lena locked her wheelchair in place beside him. The engine started with a growl. Ace whimpered softly in the back, and Lena glanced behind her every few seconds, whispering reassurance even though her voice shook. Cal pulled away from the curb. He didn't look back at the studio. He didn't need to. The message on the wall wasn't a threat. It was a promise. And now they had just declared war on the wrong man. The ocean wind along the Silver Point coast carried a sharp, metallic bite that cut through the night. Far from the chaos of downtown, the Kerrigan family's beachside penthouse gleamed like a glass crown above the cliffs. Music pulsed from the rooftop. Laughter echoed. Wealth insulated everything, but not from Cal Ritter. Inside the truck parked half a block down, Ace lifted his head despite the bandages, sniffing intently at a torn sweatshirt Cal had found earlier, half buried under shattered canvases in Lena's wrecked studio. Ace nudged the fabric, then pressed his nose to the air, pointing toward the penthouse tower. Cal rubbed his head gently. Good boy. You still tracking? Even hurt? Ace let out a low, determined hum. Pain hadn't dimmed his purpose. If anything, the attack on Lena sharpened it. Cal grabbed his gear, opened the truck door, and stepped into the cold night. The penthouse's private elevator required a fob. Cal bypassed the system in 8 seconds flat, sliding a cracked security card under the panel and triggering a short-circuit delay. A trick he'd learned long before civilians ever entered his orbit. At the top, he cracked the service door open just enough to slip into a shadowed hallway lined with expensive abstract art. Voices swelled from the main living space. He moved silently. A Marine raider didn't simply walk. He disappeared and reappeared in silence. He crouched behind the steel support column just outside the kitchen, listening. Inside, 3 of the rich kids sat scattered on velvet bar stools, downing shots like nothing in the world could touch them. Trent Kerrigan, Victor Kerrigan's son, and the one who had slapped Lena at the park, raised a glass dramatically. To handling problems before they go viral. Laughter erupted. Another boy added, "Dad said the dog goes first. Makes her panic. Then she'll do whatever the lawyer says." Cal's jaw tightened. A third kid chimed in. "I can't believe Victor told Leonard to prep the NDA before we even went back to the studio." "That's cold." Trent shrugged. "Dad knows how to clean a mess. That Marine guy, he'll back down. They always do when the system squeezes them." Cal smiled. Quiet, deadly. Let them keep thinking that. Then a new voice entered. Smooth, older, with the kind of entitlement that carried the weight of inherited power. Victor Kerrigan strode into the room, loosening his tie. His presence silenced the boys instantly. "You 3 couldn't follow a single instruction. I said scare the girl, not escalate. Now the dog is alive, she filed a report, and a witness stepped in. Do you understand how sloppy this is?" Trent shrank under the words. "Sorry, Dad. We'll finish it tonight. We know where she's hiding the dog." Victor poured himself a drink. "Good. Make it clean. No noise, no marks. Your lawyer will handle the rest." Cal's blood chilled. They were coming for Ace. That meant they were coming for Lena. He slipped out the way he came, silent as a shadow, Ace's warning growl still echoing in his mind. It was time to end this. The studio sat in darkness, stripped of its innocence, but not its purpose. Cal worked in the quiet, setting traps with the efficiency of a man who had built entire operations from smoke and instinct. Motion sensors, a fishing line trigger, a single overhead bulb wired to a remote switch. Under the cracked windows, Ace lay on a folded blanket. He was exhausted, but his ears twitched at every sound outside. His tail thumped once when Cal knelt beside him. "This isn't your fight, buddy. I shouldn't have let it become yours." Ace nudged Cal's hand stubbornly. The answer was simple. He wasn't going anywhere. Not if Lena was in danger. Cal rested a hand on his head. "You're tougher than half the raiders I know." Then, just past midnight, the motion sensor blinked. "They're here." Footsteps approached the service entrance, the same route they'd used to vandalize the place. Whispered voices, nervous laughter. Then a metal keycard scraped the lock. They were confident. They had no idea the dark wasn't theirs tonight. The door creaked open. 3 beams of phone flashlights cut through the black. Cal moved first. A hand snatched the wrist of the first intruder, twisting sharply. A flashlight clattered to the ground. A cry was muffled by Cal's forearm pressing against the guy's throat just long enough to drop him unconscious without lasting harm. One down. The second kid swung wildly into the dark. Cal grabbed his hoodie from behind, yanked, and swept his legs with one clean motion. The boy hit the floor with a stunned grunt. 2 down. The third kid aimed a flashlight desperately, voice cracking. "Guys, where are you? Hello?" Cal let him feel the silence. Then he stepped behind him, placed a firm hand on the boy's shoulder, and whispered, "Wrong house." The boy fainted on the spot. Cal dragged them together, zip-tying their wrists. They'd live. But they'd remember. A slow clapping came from the stairwell. Victor Kerrigan descended into the studio with a smile carved from polished arrogance. "Impressive. Truly. But you're making a mistake, Mr. Ritter." Cal stood still in the shadows, watching him. Victor walked deeper into the wrecked room, surveying the destruction he'd caused as if it were just business. "Do you know who I am?" Victor asked. "I can bury you in lawsuits before sunrise. I can have your bank accounts frozen. Your name smeared in the press. You think your military background protects you?" It doesn't. Money decides what truth is. Not justice. Not you. Cal stepped forward. For the first time tonight, Victor's expression flickered. Cal's voice was low, steady, almost calm. Money doesn't clean cowardice, and it doesn't erase what your sons did. Victor scoffed. My family will walk out of this untouched. You can try to stop me, but men like you're only dangerous in war. Not here. Cal's movement was swift. He closed the distance, grabbed Victor by the coat, and slammed him against the concrete pillar without breaking a sweat. Victor's breath caught. His confidence withered. Cal leaned closer, eyes sharp as razors. This isn't war. This is accountability. Footsteps echoed behind them. Ace stood, wobbly but upright. Despite the pain, he had forced himself forward, placing his body between Lena, who had just wheeled in, and Victor's sons still unconscious on the floor. Even hurt, even exhausted, he was alert, watching, guarding. Victor stared at Ace, disbelief flickering across his face. That dog should not be standing. Lena's voice shook, but her spine stayed straight. Neither should my courage, but here we are. Victor's glare sharpened. You have no idea what you're doing. You're ruining your life over a dog. Lena reached down, touching Ace's head. He saved me. So yes, I'll ruin everything for him. Cal released Victor and stepped back, his voice cutting through the room. No one here ruined anything. You did that yourself. Police sirens wailed outside. Victor paled. Cal folded his arms. You wanted silence. Instead, you raised hell. Now you get to answer for it. And in that moment, Victor Kerrigan finally understood. He had picked a fight with the wrong woman, the wrong dog, and the wrong Marine. By dawn, the sky over San Diego had shifted from deep indigo to a bruised gray, as if the night's violence still lingered in the clouds. The flashing red and blue lights outside Lena's shattered studio slowly faded as federal agents took over the scene. Their jackets read FBI, and their expressions held none of the hesitation local officers had shown days earlier. Cal watched from the corner while Lena sat near Ace, who lay calmly despite the lingering pain in every breath. The lead agent, Special Agent Nora Klein, approached Cal with a steel-sharp gaze. You're the one who sent the files? Cal nodded, sliding a flash drive across the hood of a patrol SUV. Audio recordings, video stills. Victor's voice giving explicit instructions. The boys bragging about the attack. Everything neatly packaged. Klein plugged it into her tablet and listened for 20 seconds before lifting her eyes. This isn't just assault. This is a coordinated attack on a disabled civilian and an attempt to destroy evidence. You did the right thing bringing this straight to us. Cal didn't respond. He just glanced inside the studio, where Lena whispered to Ace, their foreheads almost touching. Klein followed his gaze. We'll make sure none of them walk from this. Within hours, warrants were issued. By noon, all 3 rich kids were in handcuffs, their faces drained of the arrogance they'd worn the night before. Their beachfront penthouse was swarmed with agents. Neighbors peered out from balconies, stunned to see the golden sons of the Kerrigan Empire marched into federal vans. But the moment that hit the city hardest unfolded in front of the Kerrigan corporate building downtown. Victor Kerrigan, dressed in a $1,000 tailored coat, was shoved against the side of a black SUV while agents cuffed him. Dozens watched. Someone filmed. Someone else cheered. Victor tried to bark at reporters. This is a misunderstanding. My lawyer... Klein held up a document. Victor Kerrigan, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit felony assault, intimidation of a disabled victim, tampering with evidence, and obstruction of a federal investigation. Victor's voice cracked. You don't understand who I am. Klein didn't blink. I understand exactly who you are. That's why you're going with us. The city finally saw the man behind the curtain fall. Meanwhile, Ace was prepped for surgery. Lena sat in the waiting room, hands clasped tight, her knuckles ghost white. Every minute stretched like an hour. She tried to steady her breathing, but the fear clawed up her chest. Cal sat beside her, not speaking, not offering platitudes, just present. His presence alone seemed to anchor the room. Finally, the vet emerged. He's strong, very strong. 2 ribs repaired, bruising in the chest cavity, but he'll recover. Your dog has the heart of a fighter. Lena's breath collapsed into a small, trembling laugh. She covered her mouth and nodded. Thank you. When they wheeled Ace out, bandaged but awake, he lifted his head the moment he heard her voice. His tail swept weakly across the blanket. Lena reached out, her fingers brushing the side of his muzzle. You came back to me. You always do. Ace exhaled softly, easing his head into her hand, as if telling her he had never intended to leave. Cal watched them, something in his chest shifting. Not pain, not the old ache. Something quieter, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. 2 days later, Lena returned to find her studio door unlocked but not broken. Inside, volunteers were already painting the walls, patching the damage, salvaging what they could. Emily, a gallery owner Cal had contacted, rushed to greet Lena. A bunch of local artists and donors pitched in. And, well, someone anonymously paid the rest of your lease for the year. Lena turned to Cal. You did this, didn't you? He shrugged lightly, just made a few calls. But she saw through him. The hardened Marine, the man who spent months avoiding help, had gone out of his way to give her back something she had lost. Safety, dignity, a home for her art. She wheeled inside. Sunlight spilled through the large windows, falling across empty canvases waiting to be reborn. For the first time since the attack, she didn't feel small. She felt seen. As workers continued rebuilding, Ace limped in beside her, easing down onto a soft blanket Emily had set out for him. Every time someone approached Lena, Ace lifted his head slightly, watching, assessing, guarding. Cal leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, but the tension he'd carried for months finally seemed to loosen. Lena turned to him. They tried to tear everything away from me, and somehow I ended up with more people on my side than I ever expected. Cal met her eyes. Maybe because you finally let someone stand with you. She held his gaze. Maybe because someone showed me what it's like to be protected without being controlled. Ace gave a short, approving grunt, as if agreeing with every word. Lena laughed softly. Even hurt, he thinks he's the boss. Cal smiled. He is the boss. For a moment, the studio didn't feel broken at all. It felt like a place rebuilt on something stronger than walls. Trust. Lena looked down at Ace, then back at Cal. I didn't think I deserved this, any of it, but for the first time in a long time I feel like I'm standing on level ground again. Cal stepped closer. Not because of what was rebuilt, because of what you survived. Outside, the sun broke fully across the horizon, casting warm light across the studio floor. Ace lifted his head and stared into it, eyes reflecting something calm and certain. Healing wasn't loud. It was steady. And it was happening. For Lena. For Ace. And maybe, just maybe, for Cal Ritter as well. 3 months passed, the kind that don't storm through life but settle quietly, like dust finding its place after chaos. San Diego eased into spring, the air warmer, the days brighter, the nights less heavy for everyone who had lived through the Kerrigan ordeal. For Lena, those months were a slow walk toward reclaiming her breath. For Cal, they were an unexpected lesson in what living looked like outside survival mode. And for Ace, they were a test of patience, weeks of recovery, rebuilding strength, relearning balance. but he endured it with the stubborn pride only a shepherd could carry. Tonight was Lena's night. The art gallery downtown buzzed with soft conversation, warm lights, and the hum of a community gathering around something bigger than aesthetics. The exhibition was titled Rising from the Floor, a tribute to survivors of violence, those who had been knocked down, silenced, or dismissed, yet somehow rose again anyway. Dozens of artists contributed, but Lena's work anchored the show. Cal stood just inside the entrance, wearing a clean shirt for once, still looking slightly out of place among the polished crowd. Yet people parted instinctively when he moved, not out of fear, but because he carried a presence that felt like unspoken certainty. He scanned the room until he saw her. Lena sat near the center of the gallery, her wheelchair illuminated softly by overhead track lights. She was speaking with a journalist, hands moving gracefully as she described the emotion behind her pieces. Ace lay at her side, chest rising steady and strong, his posture calm but alert. Every so often, he leaned his head against her leg, as if grounding both of them. Cal didn't step forward yet. Instead, he wandered along the wall, studying her paintings from a distance. One canvas stopped him cold. A warm sunset washed across the frame, painted in deep golds and bruised purples. Two silhouettes stood in the glow, one human, upright and steady, one canine, vigilant and loyal at his side. They weren't facing the viewer. They were looking outward, toward the horizon, toward something healing, something new. He realized it instantly. It was him and Ace, not in battle stances, not in danger, just standing in quiet, fragile peace. The air shifted inside Cal. Not a twist of pain, not a memory clamping down on his ribs like before. Something gentler, something unfamiliar. He stepped closer, breath slow, almost cautious. Lena's voice drifted from behind him. "I wasn't sure you'd come." Cal turned. She maneuvered her chair beside him, Ace padding loyally at her wheel. She wore a simple white blouse speckled with faint blue paint she hadn't noticed. Or maybe she left it intentionally, a small signature. Her eyes gleamed not with sadness but with quiet pride. "It's your night," Cal said. "I figured I should show up before the crowd convinces you I'm just a rumor." Lena smiled. "You're not a rumor. You're the reason half these people donated, and the reason Ace is still here." Ace nudged Cal's hand, tail flicking once with the faintest hint of mischief. The dog stared up at him with that steady, unshakable gaze, the one he gave only to those he trusted completely. Cal crouched to meet Ace at eye level. "Look at you, walking like nothing ever happened." Ace gave a short huff, leaning his forehead into Cal's chest. A silent greeting, a warrior's acknowledgement. Lena watched the two with a softness Cal wasn't used to receiving. Ace doesn't do that with everyone. Cal shrugged lightly. Maybe he knows we get each other. Lena glanced at the sunset painting. "Do you like it?" Cal turned to the canvas again. His throat worked, but words didn't come immediately. It wasn't vanity, seeing himself immortalized. It was the emotion radiating from the paint, the warmth, the serenity he'd never imagined for himself. "It's different," he finally said. "Different how?" Cal hesitated. "Most people don't see me like that." Lena tilted her head. "How do they see you?" "As a weapon, I guess. A job. A warning." She nodded slowly. "And I painted what I saw." He looked at her. Really looked. For months, she'd been the one fighting to hold herself together. But now she was the one giving him something he'd been missing without realizing it. A glimpse of the man he could be when he wasn't bracing for another battle. Across the room, the crowd applauded as someone gave a short speech about resilience and community support. The sound washed warmly through the space. Lena turned toward it, but her eyes flicked back to Cal. "You know," she said, "this exhibition isn't just about surviving. It's about choosing to rebuild, choosing people who help you stand again." Cal leaned against the wall beside her. "I'm still working on that part. You're already doing it. One step at a time." He exhaled, and for once, the breath didn't shake. Ace nudged his leg gently, as if echoing her words, as if saying, "I'm here. You're not doing this alone. Not anymore." Cal looked down at the dog. "You're the real hero, buddy." Ace straightened proudly, puffing out his chest. Lena laughed softly. "Don't tell him that. His ego's already bigger than mine." But Ace didn't move away. Instead, he pressed himself between them, leaning against their legs, binding them together in one small, unspoken gesture. A family, forged in the ashes of something cruel. Lena lifted her eyes to Cal. "When I was painting that piece, I realized something. The world took a lot from me, but it also gave me Ace. And then, it brought you." Cal swallowed, unsure what to do with the warmth blooming in his chest. "You deserve more than what the world gave you." She held his gaze. "So do you." He couldn't look away. Outside, the sun dipped lower, casting a real sunset across the gallery windows, almost identical to the one she'd painted. For a moment, Cal let himself simply exist inside it. No alarms, no triggers, no shadows from old missions chasing him down. Just quiet, just peace, just two survivors standing beside a dog who refused to let either of them fall. And in that stillness, Cal Ritter understood something he had spent years running from. Life wasn't only a battlefield. Sometimes it was a canvas. And if he was brave enough, he could choose what to paint next. The story should have faded by now. Most headlines do. Most wounds quiet down. But what happened to Lena and Ace refused to slip into silence. It moved through California the way a tide pulls slowly but relentlessly across the shore, touching people who had never met them, reshaping conversations that had been ignored for too long. It began with a single invitation. A statewide organization dedicated to disability rights reached out to Lena after hearing her speak briefly at the Rising from the Floor exhibition. They asked her to share her story at their annual summit in Sacramento. She hesitated at first. Crowds still made her tense. Microphones still made her voice shake. But Cal said gently, "It's not about reliving what happened. It's about choosing what comes next." So she agreed. The conference hall was larger than she expected. Rows of chairs stretched across the room. Stage lights hummed softly overhead. Ace sat beside her wheelchair, fully healed, alert, wearing the vest that declared his role, but not his heart. The audience quieted when she rolled onto the stage. For a moment, her breath caught. She saw faces from every background, people with wheelchairs, prosthetics, walking canes, parents holding children's hands, teachers, counselors, and somewhere in the back, Cal, standing straight, arms loosely crossed, eyes locked on her, grounding her. She spoke simply, about art, about surviving the accident, about rebuilding her life with Ace, about the afternoon 3 privileged boys decided her existence made her an easy target, about the man who ran toward them instead of away. When her voice cracked, Ace nudged her elbow until she steadied. The whole room saw it. The partnership. The loyalty. By the time she finished, the audience rose to their feet. Not in pity, not in shock, in recognition. After the talk, survivors lined up to meet her. Some cried, some hugged her, some knelt just to pet Ace, whispering their own thanks to him. Her story became less about pain and more about possibility. Newspapers covered the event. Local TV ran a feature. Social media lit up with conversations about accessibility, invisible struggles, and the resilience of survivors who rarely had a platform. And somewhere in that growing light, Cal began carving out a new life of his own. He didn't return to the Marines. He didn't seek another battlefield. Instead, he found himself working with rehabilitation centers, teaching staff how to recognize threats, set up safety protocols, and defend vulnerable clients without escalating danger. His Marine Raider instincts didn't vanish. They simply shifted, turning outward, forming a shield instead of a weapon. At first he worried he had nothing to offer beyond muscle and scars. But patients trusted him. Families trusted him. And Ace would often come along, quietly moving from room to room, resting his head on knees, reminding people that healing sometimes had 4 legs. One day at a training seminar, a young veteran with a prosthetic leg stopped Cal in the hallway. He said he had watched a video of Cal helping Lena at the gallery. He said it gave him the courage to leave his apartment for the first time in weeks. Cal didn't know what to say. He simply nodded, shook the veteran's hand, and let the weight of those words settle into him. A good weight, a necessary one. Meanwhile, Lena's paintings began circulating beyond San Diego. A non-profit bought one of her pieces for a campaign against hate crimes. Another gallery invited her to display a full collection centered around Ace and adaptive strength. She told Cal she wasn't sure she deserved the attention. Then he looked at her and said, "You didn't survive all that just to shrink. Let people see you." And they did. They saw her. They saw Ace. They saw the truth behind every brushstroke. That a single act of cruelty can break someone apart, but the right act, offered at the right time, can stitch 2 people's lives together in ways neither expected. Their story didn't flatten into a simple inspirational message. It pushed uncomfortable questions into the open. Why had the system protected the Kerrigans for so long? How many others had been silenced? How many didn't have someone like Cal running toward them? Discussions spread into universities, community centers, activist groups. Legislators in the state capitol began reviewing cases involving abuse of people with disabilities. A task force was formed. Advocacy groups gained momentum. None of it happened overnight, but it was movement after years of stillness. Transformation often begins quietly. And through it all, Ace remained the heart of their little circle. The dog who refused to back down. The dog who stood between danger and the person he loved. The dog who, in every photo of Lena's speeches, sat proudly beside her, chest high, eyes focused, as if declaring to the world, "She's not alone." One evening, after a long day at the rehabilitation center, Cal visited Lena's studio. It had been rebuilt with funds from a community grant. New walls, new windows, new security. Though Cal often joked that he preferred to be her security system himself. Lena was painting when he arrived. Ass trotted over immediately, bumping Cal's leg with a happy grunt. "You two changing the world again today?" Lena asked without looking up. Cal shook his head softly. "Just trying to keep people safe." She paused her brushstroke. "That's more than most ever do." Cal leaned against the doorway, watching her work. Watching the quiet determination in her movements, the way she no longer flinched at every noise outside. He realized something then. Her strength didn't come from forgetting what happened. It came from using it. Their lives hadn't become extraordinary overnight. They weren't trying to be heroes. They were simply 2 people and one stubborn shepherd who refused to let the worst thing that happened define the rest of the story. But the rest of the world had noticed anyway. And now, throughout California, in whispers and conversations, in classrooms and community centers, their names surfaced again and again. Not as victims, not as headlines, as a reminder that a single cruel moment can shatter someone, but the right act, one moment of courage, one instinct to protect, one step toward another human being, can save 2 lives at once. Lena's and Cal's. And Ace's legacy, tail steady, eyes bright, walked right beside them. The studio lights were brighter than Cal expected. Not harsh, just persistent, like the sun refusing to let a man hide behind shadows anymore. The cameras faced him in a neat semicircle. Sound technicians stood quietly against the back wall. Producers whispered final cues. And beside Cal's chair, Ace sat tall, calm, every part of him steady in a way that reassured Cal more than any deep breath could. Lena waited just out of frame, watching with a gentle, encouraging smile. She wasn't the one being interviewed tonight. They had asked for Cal specifically. The Marine raider who intervened. The man who ran toward danger when everyone else froze. The veteran whose story had unexpectedly illuminated a deeper truth about courage, community, and the power of one choice. But Cal didn't feel like a headline. He felt like a man who stumbled into the right moment and refused to look away. The interviewer, a woman with warm eyes and a familiar cadence used to drawing out stories, started with the basics. How Cal met Lena. Why he reacted so fast. What pushed him to get involved after the attack. Cal answered carefully, sticking to facts. He talked about instincts, training, situational awareness. But she eventually leaned forward and asked the question everyone in the room had been waiting for. Why did you risk your life for them? Cal paused. It wasn't a long hesitation, but it was enough to quiet the room even further. He glanced at Ace, whose ears twitched in a soft, almost curious tilt. And suddenly, the truth felt simple. He placed a hand gently on Ace's head. The shepherd leaned into the touch, eyes half closing with trust. He wasn't just a dog in danger. Cal said quietly. He was someone waiting for help, just like Lena. A ripple of stillness passed through the studio. Not dramatic, something quieter, something weightier. The interviewer nodded slowly. You talk about him like he's more than a service animal. Cal looked down at Ace again. You spend enough time around a dog like him, you realize he's never just anything. Ace lifted his gaze to Cal's face, then to the camera crew, then back to Lena waiting in the wings. When the camera zoomed in, his eyes shone with a clarity that didn't need translation. Wisdom, loyalty, a kind of resilient gentleness that had survived everything thrown at him. The interviewer continued. Some people say dogs act out of instinct, that they don't understand what's happening. Cal lifted his chin slightly. Then they've never met a shepherd who would rather break himself than let someone he loves fall. Ace's tail tapped once against the floor. A single thump, firm and steady. The producer signaled for the final question. The camera rolled in tighter, framing Cal from the chest up, Ace's muzzle still resting near his knee. Cal, after everything that happened, after everything you've seen in your life, what do you want people to take away from this? Cal inhaled, slowly, deeply, as if the world had asked something sacred of him. He looked directly into the lens, not with bravado, not with the distant stare of a soldier reliving old deployments, but with the quiet conviction of a man who finally understood what mattered. What's your story with a loyal pet? The words weren't rehearsed. They didn't need to be. They carried all the things he had kept close for years. Loss, brotherhood, redemption. And the belief that loyalty wasn't just an instinct, but a choice, consciously made again and again. The camera lingered on him for a moment more. Then the shot shifted to Ace. His eyes filled the screen. Calm, intelligent, bright with a depth that felt almost human. A silent messenger. A reminder. A question. A promise. The crew didn't move until the director whispered, "Cut." Even then, no one rushed. Something warm and reverent settled across the studio, as if people were reluctant to break the spell Ace had cast with just one look. When Cal stood, Ace pressed close to his leg, guiding him off the set. Lena joined them halfway, her smile soft and full. "You did great," she said. Cal shook his head. He did. He's always the one people remember. She brushed her fingers lightly against Ace's fur. Maybe that's exactly how it should be. Ace leaned into both of them, his body forming a quiet link between their worlds. A bond no cruelty could break, and no camera could fully capture. As they stepped outside, the evening breeze rolled across the parking lot. Cal looked upward, letting the fresh air settle into his lungs. Ace nudged his hand again, and Lena laughed. "You know," she said, "he kind of stole the whole interview." Cal smiled. He always does. People see him, and something in them changes. Lena nodded. Maybe that's the point. They walked toward the car, Ace trotting confidently ahead, his silhouette firm and proud under the streetlights. And somewhere between the glowing pavement and the soft, persistent night breeze, Cal felt that same question echo back toward the world. What's your story with a loyal pet? He hoped people would answer it. Share it. Pass it forward. Because in every story like theirs, there was a lesson waiting. A reminder that loyalty heals, courage inspires, and the bond between a person and a dog could change more than a life. It could change a community. It could change a culture. It could change the world. And for anyone watching, anyone listening, anyone who'd ever loved a German shepherd or been saved by one in ways quiet or loud, Cal left them with the final silent message as Ace hopped into the back seat, tail wagging once like a signature stamp. Support the German Shepherd stories, share them, honor them, because in the end, every loyal dog deserves a voice, and every story deserves to be told.